Good day and welcome to this special edition of Spotlight we call GM's Corner, a series of regular short conversations with Lake Monticello's General Manager Steve Hurwitz about what's on his agenda and what's on his mind. Well, Mr. General Manager, here we go again, and alas and alack, summer has ended for the kids. The Fluvanna Schools reopen this week, and that means early morning and mid-afternoon hours are going to get pretty busy on our streets around here, isn't it?
It does, and of course the safety of the children is a huge factor. So with that in mind, the board has made a change in policy to recognize the practice of people driving their children to the bus stops and then waiting, so that we recognize that people will do that and pull off the road into the easements. And there are a couple of, short of the intersection, a couple of things we'd like people to keep in mind. Number one would be, if at all possible, don't pull up right to the corner, right in front of the stop sign. People coming around you trying to make a turn will encounter some difficulty with that. So if at all possible, don't pull up right to the corner. Back 20 or 30 feet would be better. By the same token, you want to get out of the roadway, but if it's an especially wet and muggy, wet and muddy kind of situation in the easements with the ditches, if people could be aware of not necessarily putting the heavy vehicle right on top of the mud and so forth, because it does make gouges in the dirt, and that's important. But safety of the children is the biggest aspect there. So the kind of things for people to keep in mind is to be careful when approaching what's obviously a collection of cars with children around under all circumstances. Fortunately, we'll have daylight during bus pickup now for a while until the fall. But soon it'll be dark and we'll have children out there at bus stops. So to be vigilant, which includes when the buses are ahead of you and you're in your vehicle and they flash and they go yellow flashing, you know the stop sign's going to come out. And that is absolutely safety rule number one. I remember a time, as many do, when buses didn't have that. And the reason buses have those stop signs that flip out is because of accidents that have occurred with children crossing. So,
and that yellow, it's not necessarily like the traffic signal caution where I can give it a little more gas and get through this before it turns red. No, he's fixing to put on that red, and those doors are going to be opening. Children are going to be on the street.
So with the school buses rolling, it might take some, depending on their exit route, another minute or two to leave the community and get on the outside roads, and that's just a fact of life here.
Well, we've got something like, I remember last time I really heard something on the order of 25 school bus routes in here. That's a lot of school buses.
Yes, indeed. We're a huge presence, and I can tell you from the school board to the school superintendent and the assistant superintendent who runs that program, along with the people that run the school bus program, they're very mindful of the service to our community. Very careful. We work with them on a number of issues here and there, and it's it's a great thing that we have had virtually no problems with safety, and we'd love to keep it that way. But we do appreciate the support from the schools all the way from the top.
And makes the speed limit ever more important, of course.
Yes, indeed.
So
25 it is. We are a 25 community.
Okay, all righty. What's been the reaction to the actions taken on food and beverage? The cessation, basically, of the Friday and Saturday night dinners at Ashlawn and the trimming back of weekday breakfasts here at the pub, et cetera. What kind of reaction are you getting?
A strong reaction, and one I'm personally very pleased with. People have been very forthright in several venues with their views. At all ends of all parts of the spectrum, there are folks who are disappointed and look forward to a return to something like what was available at Ashlawn. They've been very clear about that. But the reason I'm very pleased about it is I have a book full of inputs. Leaders of some dining groups and golf groups have taken the time to write their collective observations. We had a meeting with about 17 representatives of dining groups and golf groups.
Yeah,
And I came
wow.
away from that with 4 pages of notes.
Wow.
I was invited and really appreciate the opportunity in a private home to meet with one of the dining groups just this past weekend. And they were very kind to share for about 50 minutes their expectations, what they look forward to. And honestly, they were very open to the explanation, which is that the financial performance is very important. No matter what level of subsidy there is or isn't, and we've always subsidized food and beverage
Oh,
here.
yes.
Always.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever the level is, we need to operate sufficiently so that it's not a real drag on the overall financial health of the community. And for a while, it was going in that negative direction where it would have, had it continued, been a real negative drag. Plus, there was a factor of trying to run 2 restaurants. We were, number one, competing with each other, but also it was very difficult to share foodstuffs back and forth, equipment and staff. So the board approved the concept of concentrating operations here in order to get all of the main elements of the business operation right. So when I say the business operation, I'm talking about personnel costs, the cost of the food and drink, and then administration. However, you know, for most people that was okay, that's good, but how about the service and the quality? How about when we come to make arrangements for our dining group that, you know, that there be expectations that are clearly established and then met, which they felt was a problem in the past. And I said, you're exactly right. And they are right. And they were kind in sharing those opinions. So with the business matters, we're almost there in terms of those cost numbers. In fact, we're very close, much closer than we've ever been under the current way of doing food and beverage. And we've started working on those elements that are critical to people, all the way from if you walk in, being greeted, being seated, the service being at an appropriate level of attentiveness and knowledge, so there's a training element. We're working on that. We're working on then the regularity of the food. People would like to have this, if they order an item one week and the next week, that it be pretty much the same. You know, and so we're working on all those things under Andrew Kerper's leadership with F&B. And I will say that there have been some exciting developments. I and my family were here last Friday, and the place was full, and the waiters were really moving around, doing everything they should. People were getting served in a timely way. Well, that's the level we aspire to, and people expect of us constantly. So some of the dining groups have said they are going to try and do that. They have pointed out that an elegant meal at Ashlawn is not exactly reproducible here in a meeting room at the pub. I shouldn't say here, but at the pub. But we're going to endeavor with decorations and so forth to make it a reasonable facsimile. People were receptive, but they were very clear that they expected performance from us, and we're committed to that. So we have a kind of a hit team of Andrew Kerper, our food and beverage director, our business manager, Chuck Wimberly, and me. We meet every week. We actually get daily financial reports. We review them and then look at those elements of training, service, quality. So what I've said is we plan to produce what people want, and we look forward to meeting their expectations.
And you have mentioned you were going to be trying to work out some accommodations with people, like some golf groups who want to come in at 10:30 for breakfast or something. Is that in the works?
It is,
like
and we started in spots. We'll be learning as we go along, but we've at first when we announced we wouldn't open until 11, it became clear that in at least one case, if not more than that, the groups start coming off the course at 10:30, and they didn't want to sit around and wait. They didn't want to wait until everybody was there before the order was taken. So we accommodated that. It worked very well last Tuesday, and we look forward to that continuing to work. There's some other elements that we'll discuss with them, and again, the people were very clear. I asked the question of specifically, what do you need for your group to cause you to come to the pub for your food needs, for your food, dining, and social experience, rather than some other place. And so that was one. I think there's some further accommodations we can make And so far, the groups have been very cooperative in being, I don't want to say reasonable, that's the wrong term, but helping us all be realistic about what we can do to meet those objectives.
All righty. Well, the ECC inspections that have been continuing on apparently a regular, more organized, scheduled basis, I'll say, have certainly seem to have provoked community response and provoke their comments to you, have they not?
They have, and it's natural. What we're doing is a little different than the way it's been done in the past. But I will say that we are going section by section. However, that doesn't on a cycle through this year. But that doesn't mean we don't look at other things. Some people have said, "Oh, there's something that really needs attention across the street or on the other side of the lake, and you're not looking at that." Well, the answer is we are going section by section, but we're looking at everything that's called to our attention. If I notice something, or any of the staff does, or somebody, an owner or resident calls it to our attention, we depart from that schedule and look. It's also true that when you do this kind of detailed look in sequence at a community this large, people might get the impression that we're dealing with them and ignoring somebody else that's got exactly the same circumstances. But it's only a matter of we're doing 4,200 plus houses, and it takes a while to cover them all. Another very important point, we've got an excellent crew over there. They're very open when there's a first letter, which is virtually a no harm, no foul, there's no penalty. They're very open to explanations, pointing out things, whatever it is. They're very glad to deal with it. On many occasions, there is kind of an adjustment made in what was initially a list of violations. And people should not be afraid to say, yes, but.
Okay.
You know, yes, I have a tree down, and here's the history of it, or whatever it is. They spend, at the ECC office, they spend a lot of time with that. On top of that, we've made adjustments along with, for example, recreation equipment. You know, at one point it was possible to read the policy, which is being addressed with the board, and we believe the board will agree with altering it so that at one point it appeared to say outdoor recreation equipment not in use had to be put away. Well, the application of that gets a little difficult when you're talking about a basketball goal, a mobile goal next to a driveway, as opposed to one that's decrepit, torn, ripped, you know, beaten down. That certainly needs to be removed because they're not in use anyway. But we've made an adjustment in that area in particular, and we more or less consider in regular use for sports equipment. Not only that, if someone has a view about something like that and they think the rule is not so great, the best thing they can do is point out what it is in the rule they think is unfair or being applied incorrectly, and we're more than glad to consider that. After all, we're talking about owners who are members of the association, and the work is on their behalf. So some people, you know, often are put off by that. It's kind of, you're getting a bad report card, but it's not quite that. And there's all kinds of opportunities to address your particular situation or a set of rules that either are being applied in a way you think should be looked at, or the rule itself. We're more than glad to do that. There's a process for it.
Well, all right, that sounds fair enough. And then, of course, people still do, if it comes to the point where they are referred to the compliance committee, there again, they have the opportunity to bring all these explanations and to defend themselves appropriately, et cetera, et cetera.
There's a hearing.
Okay. Yep, that's
and
right.
It's got all the due process protections that you would hope.
Okay. Well, before we wrap, a couple of weeks ago you issued a challenge to the community to come up with a sort of a pool of volunteers, of people who would be available or willing possibly to help set up things like July 4 or, for instance, coming Oktoberfest. You asked for 20 volunteers by August 15. How are we doing?
Well, we're going, but we need more volunteers. I think we have about 1.5.
I see.
We have one for sure and one maybe.
Okay.
So I'm calling that 1.5
We're considerably, slow out of the gate.
We're slow out of the gate,
Right.
but we're strong finishers.
Okay.
And it's important to know, HOAs are not, we're not a rental property run by a management company where the company is responsible for everything. We clearly are run by volunteers. The board is all volunteers, the
Yeah.
committee,
Yeah.
the broadcast group, it's a huge factor here. And then all the events that we have that are wonderful, like July 4th and Oktoberfest, really depend on volunteers.
Sure.
So we're looking forward to filling out the ranks
Okay.
with folks that enjoy helping their neighbors and having a good time doing it.
Okay. Hope for that strong finish, the anchor leg. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much. You've been watching Steve Hurwitz, Lake Monticello's general manager, here on GM's Corner. We hope you will tune in for more of these GM Corner events. Keep up with what is really going on here, as well as the full range of programming brought to you here on good old Channel 977, or of course up on YouTube. So until we see you next time, on behalf of the LMOA Broadcast Group, I'm Ron Krause. Thanks very much for watching, and good day.